Hey, so this is Brutus, and I'll be showing you how I'm drawing him at a slower speed than usual. This video will be 15 minutes long, and it's a story. So I will read you a story that is uplifting in this time of need, and maybe you can just have it on in the background or put it on YouTube onto the TV and just enjoy. So here we go. This is a story called There Was a Boy, and it's from inspirationalstories.eu. There was a boy whose family was very wealthy. One day, his father took him on a trip to the country, where he aimed to show his son how poor people live. So they arrived to a farm of a very poor family, as he considered. They spent several days there. On their return, the father asked the son, "Did he like the trip?" "Oh, it was great, Dad," the boy replied. "Did you notice how poor people live?" "Yeah, I did," said the boy. The father asked his son to tell him in more detail about his impressions from the trip. "Well, we have only one dog, and they have 4 of them. In our garden, there's a pool, while they have a river that has no end. We've got expensive lanterns, but they have stars above their heads at night. We have the patio, and they have the whole horizon. We have only a small piece of land, while they have endless fields. We buy food, they grow it. We have high fence for protection of our property, and they don't need it, as their friends protect them." The father was stunned. He could not say a word. Then the boy added, "Thank you, Dad, for letting me see how poor we are." The story shows that true wealth, as well as happiness, is not measured by material things. Love, friendship, and freedom are far more valuable.
Some silence will follow each story, so just enjoy that and wait for the next one.
Here's another one. It's called A Glass of Milk Paid in Full by Stephen. And this one comes from academictips.org, and it's part of their blog. One day, a poor boy who was selling goods from door to door to pay his way through school found he had only 1 thin dime left, and he was hungry. He decided he would ask for a meal at the next house. However, he lost his nerve when a lovely young woman opened the door. Instead of a meal, he asked for a drink of water. She thought he looked hungry, so she brought him a large glass of milk. He drank it slowly, and then he asked, "How much do I owe you?" "You don't owe me anything," she replied. "Mother has taught us to never accept pay for kindness." As Howard Kelly left the house, he not only felt stronger physically, but his faith in God and man was strong also. He had been ready to give up and quit. Years later, that young woman became critically ill. The local doctors were baffled. They finally sent her to the big city, where they called in specialists to study her rare disease. Dr. Howard Kelly was called in for consultation. When he heard the name of the town she came from, a strange light filled his eyes. Immediately, he rose and went down the hall of the hospital into her room. As Howard Kelly left that house, he not only felt stronger physically, but his faith in God and man was also strong. He had been ready to give up and quit. Years later, that young woman became critically ill. The local doctors were baffled. They finally sent her to the big city, where they called in specialists to study her rare disease. Dr. Howard Kelly was called in for the consultation. When he heard the name of the town she came from, a strange light filled his eyes. Immediately, he rose and went down the hall of the hospital to her room. Dressed in his doctor's gown, he went in to see her. He recognized her at once. He went back to the consultation room, determined to do his best to save her life. From that day, he gave special attention to the case. After a long struggle, the battle was won. Dr. Kelly requested the business office to pass the final bill to him for approval. He looked at it and then wrote something on the edge, and the bill was sent to her room. She feared to open it, for she was sure it would take the rest of her life to pay for it all. Finally, she looked, and something caught her attention on the side of the bill. She began to read the following words: "Paid in full with 1 glass of milk. Signed, Dr. Howard Kelly." This one's called The Seasons of Life, and it's from livelifehappy.com. There was a man who had 4 sons. He wanted his sons to learn to not judge things too quickly. So he sent them each on a quest, in turn, to go and look at a pear tree that was a great distance away. The first son went in the winter, the second in the spring, the third in the summer, and the youngest in the fall. When they all had gone and come back, he called them together to describe what they had seen. The first son said that the tree was ugly, bent, and twisted. The second son said, no, it was covered with green buds and full of promise. The third son disagreed. He said it was laden with blossoms that smelled so sweet and looked so beautiful. It was the most graceful thing he had ever seen. The last son disagreed with all of them. He said it was ripe and drooling with fruit, full of life and fulfillment. The man explained to his son that they were all right because they had each seen but one season in the tree's life. He told them you cannot judge a tree or a person by only one season, and that the essence of who they are and the pleasure, joy, love that comes from that life can only be measured at the end, when all the seasons add up. If you give up when it's winter, you will miss the promise of your spring, the beauty of your summer, and the fulfillment of your fall. Don't judge life by one's difficult season. Don't let the pain of one season destroy the joy of all of the rest.
Another little pause between stories to just enjoy the waves.
Third and last story. It's called Positive Thinking, again by Stephen from academictips.org. Jerry was the kind of guy you love to hate. He was always in a good mood and always had something positive to say. When someone would ask him how he was doing, he would reply, "If I were any better, I would be twins." He was a unique manager because he had several waiters who had followed him around from restaurant to restaurant. The reasons the waiter followed Jerry was because of his attitude. He was a natural motivator. If an employee was having a bad day, Jerry was there telling the employee how to look on the positive side of the situation. Seeing this style really made me curious, so one day I went up to Jerry and asked him, "I don't get it. You can't be a positive person all of the time. How do you do it?" Jerry replied, "Each morning I wake up and say to myself, 'Jerry, you have two choices today. You can choose to be in a good mood, or you can choose to be in a bad mood.' I choose to be in a good mood. Each time something bad happens, I can choose to be a victim, or I can choose to learn from it. I choose to learn from it. Every time someone comes to me complaining, I can choose to accept their complaining, or I can point out the positive side of life. And I choose the positive side of life." "Yeah, right. It's not that easy," I protested. "Yes, it is," Jerry said. "Life is all about choices. When you cut away all the junk, every situation is a choice. You choose how you react to situations. You choose how people will affect your mood. You choose to be in a good mood or a bad mood. The bottom line is, it's your choice how you live life." I reflected on what Jerry said. Soon thereafter, I left the restaurant industry to start my own business. We lost touch, but often I think about him when I make a choice about life instead of reacting to it. Several years later, I heard that Jerry did something you were never supposed to do in a restaurant business. He left the back door open one morning and was held up at gunpoint by 3 armed robbers. While trying to open the safe, his hand, shaking from nervousness, slipped off the combination. The robbers panicked and shot him. Luckily, Jerry was found relatively quickly and rushed to the hospital to the local trauma center. After 18 hours of surgery and weeks of intensive care, Jerry was released from the hospital with fragments of the bullet still in his body. I saw Jerry about 6 months after the accident. When I asked him how he was, he replied, "If I were any better, I'd be twins. Want to see my scars?" I declined to see his wounds, but did ask him what had gone through his mind as the robbery took place. "The first thing that went through my mind was that I should have locked that back door," Jerry replied. Then, as I lay on the floor, I remembered that I had two choices. I could choose to live, or I could choose to die. I chose to live. "Weren't you scared? Did you lose consciousness?" I asked. Jerry continued. "The paramedics were great. They kept telling me I was going to be fine. But when they wheeled me into the emergency room and I saw the expression of the faces and of the doctors and nurses, I got really scared. In their eyes, I read, 'He's a dead man.' I knew I needed to take action." "What did you do?" I asked. "Well, there was a big, burly nurse shouting questions at me," said Jerry. "She asked if I was allergic to anything. 'Yes,' I replied. The doctors and nurses stopped working as they waited for my reply. I took a deep breath and yelled, 'Bullets!' Over their laughter. I told them, 'I'm choosing to live. Operate on me as if I'm alive, not dead.'" Jerry lived thanks to the skill of his doctors, but also because of his amazing attitude. I learned from him that every day we have a choice to live fully. Attitude, after all, is everything. I pick these stories just based on being grateful for what we do have, and just remember everything is temporary, so be present and enjoy the moment, and it will pass. And whatever you're doing, just be kind to one another.